All right, well, we're back. A little bit of a different setup this weekend. We're out of our element for sure. I don't have somebody sitting right next to me, which is a little weird.
I know this whole setup is really cool, but yeah, it's we're in Laguna right now. We're hanging out. We've got a different setup, but we're still pumping them out. So.
Yeah, thanks to MotoAmerica guys for having us. Obviously, we didn't take the bus out here, so we didn't have anything to do a pod in, but we've been wanting to do one with our guests today. But before we get into that, just Jimmy, what you've been up to the last few weeks? I know you had a Euro trip again, right?
Yeah, I just went and saw the Chica, just trying to keep that relationship strong. And it's tough, with the whole visa situation. We talk about it all the time, but we're doing well, and it was fun. Nice little reset after kind of smashing 2 bikes in and having a couple difficult rounds. So it was nice to kind of do that, but we're back, we're firing, and we're here in Laguna. What about yourself?
That's it, man. Just busy.
You've been grinding.
Yeah, we were at Jersey last weekend doing a little coaching and
testing the track out.
Yeah, testing the track out, just making sure everything's good over there. But that's really it. Trying to enjoy some time at home. Obviously, it's been hot in New York, so not a whole lot. Fez has been swimming. He learned how to swim the last couple weeks, so got him a little shark life jacket. That's about it. But yeah, otherwise, just want to say thank you to everyone. We just had our latest pod drop with Bobby, and that was a really good one. We've got a lot of really good feedback so far on that, so thanks everyone who's giving us good vibes, and Bob especially.
Tag Bob in it, let him know that it's good. He was a little nervous, but we think it's one of our best, our funnest pods. He's super raw and he has such an amazing story, but it's been super cool. I think that pod's been one of our best day one drops.
Yep.
So, and thank you to everybody as
we
well.
We hit 1,000 on YouTube.
Dude, we're a big partner on YouTube, so that's big for us. We're stoked on that, but man, let's get into it. We're on a time crunch today, so we got to kind of pump this one out. But
special thanks to our partner, Law Tigers. Law Tigers are America's motorcycle lawyers. They've been supporting our pod since day one, and really thankful to have them on. If you or someone you know is ever injured in a motorcycle accident or has a motorcycle accident and you need some legal advice, feel free to give them a call. Their services are at no cost to riders. Get you taken care of and back out on the road. And with Law Tigers, you never ride alone. So
1-800 Law Tigers, baby. And
there you go.
Boom.
Did you call them after your last race?
Harley might have.
We're singing already. No, but we also have another big announcement. We got another big announcement that we got to make. That we're going to be partnered with MotoAmerica Live. All of our content is now going to be on MotoAmerica Live Plus. That's super cool for us. We love what they're doing, and anybody who's already on the platform gets our stuff for free. And if you're not, you need to go to MotoAmerica Live Plus and get on that. So we're really thankful for that. And as we roll into our guests,
Mr. Chuck Aksland.
How's it going, boys?
Yeah, we're here. It's hotter than we were expecting. I was geared up for a cold day today, and I got a hot day. So
yeah, but I moved up to Washington a couple of years ago now, and it's hotter up there right now than it is
really
here. So yeah,
we
missed it by a week.
Huh.
I kind of feel like the whole U.S. is in a just. There's really everywhere I go is hot.
In a sauna.
Yeah, it's wild. But I got to tell you, Chuck, man, we were trying to do some research on you, and you're a bit of a ghost.
I am, yeah.
You're a bit of a ghost. I was Googling, and I was had to throw up some chat GPT, trying to find some stuff about you. I was asking Pridmore. I'm asking, all these people. I'm like, man, I can't find anything about him. I can't find when, and luckily we've got some good stuff to talk about. But, man, how you been?
I've been good. Yeah, everything's
good. You're looking real tan.
Yeah, it's actually my wife yelled at me yesterday because I came back off the golf course. I was playing with Skip Aksland, my uncle, and he beat me by 2 strokes, but I got the better tan out of the deal. So my wife wasn't too happy. She couldn't believe it.
You do a lot of golfing?
I used to when I lived in California. Lived around a golf course kind of resort deal, which actually Kenny Sr. and Jr. moved to the same place, so we all would play, but at that time, I could just ride the golf cart out of my house and go play 18 holes and not have to wait on anybody, do it in the evening. And I got down to a 7. And then my hip started going bad, and I kind of got out of it, and we moved away. And so I'm trying to get back into it now. I built a golf simulator thing in my garage. And so, because in Washington, you can't really play winter golf. So I got my garage golf set up, and back down to an 11, I guess.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
Getting there. Still play pretty sloppy, but it's fun.
Right. I think anybody that plays golf, when you start hearing getting close to single digits, that's a a solid deal. I mean, I'm a wannabe golfer, big 16 over here. So
I don't even try.
Yeah,
I don't have the patience.
Well, it's just the same with everything. You got to put some commitment towards it, right? If you're going to try and get down there.
And it's so hard, man. As soon as you start trying to work on your swing, it's,
yeah,
man, you just get worse, I think.
Yeah, you get worse before you get better, and then you go back again.
I think it's
Sure.
a lot worse, though. It's not like any other sports where you're like, hey, I see a little bit of a backward step, but here it's like, man, I've just got like really bad. I'm like, I can't even hit this thing. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. But what I really wanted to start with is I want to know, like, go way far back, and I want to understand how you actually got into motorcycles, because that's something that I had a hard time finding, is where you actually started in the motorcycle industry. I had so much, of your recent kind of career
Sure.
in the last, 20 years or so. But before that, it's kind of really tough to find anything about.
Yeah. I started riding when I was 3. My dad was Kenny Roberts' first sponsor when he was 14 years old. And my grandfather had a truck company. And so I think he had about 50, 60 acres. And on that, we had a motocross track and a short track. It was actually the first, you hear a lot about Kenny Roberts Ranch and Valentino's. That was actually the first ranch. So
Wow.
we had a short track and motocross track, and I lived there. I grew up on it. And it was cool. The short track, my grandfather, he put almond holes, I grew up in Manteca in the Central Valley, a lot of almond farmers and stuff. And so he took the holes of the almonds and ground it up and put it in the dirt, and it would hold the moisture. So you had a perfect cushion short track every time you went out. So that's where Kenny rode. Skip, grew up there. I grew up riding there. I started racing a little bit when I was 8 years old. One of the cool things on the short track, there was, and I was riding then, I think, a Yamaha 60 Mini Enduro, and they were building a trailer park off in the distance, and there was a big mound of dirt, and there was this kid riding like the same. I could tell it was the same bike, and I rode over there and checked it out, and then it was Fred Merkel.
No way.
So then Fred came over and rode on my track. So we've known each other for since then.
Was it your dad that had the Suzuki dealership, or is that your uncle?
No, my dad had a Suzuki dealership. I think he sold Hadakas too at the time.
Okay.
And
that was in like the late 60s.
It would have been, yeah.
67, 68, I think I saw.
And my dad was a pretty good racer. Grew up around Lodi Cycle Bowl and all the Northern California scene. He'd be the first to admit that, when it came to the pro side, that's where he kind of faltered. He was a good amateur guy. We have a pretty bitchin' picture of him at the Santa Rosa Mile. He's got the whole shot, and there's Jim Rice and Rayburn and Lawwell and Dick Mann, all those guys behind him. And then I said, what happened down the straight? And he said he missed a shift. Didn't make the main.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
How long did you guys have the dealership for? Because that's actually, we started, my family was a Suzuki dealer in 66, so it was kind of funny to see that.
So he had the dealership, if I remember right. It was late 60s, and then he moved it actually to the ranch in the early 70s, and then he started working on Kenny's flat track stuff. So back when Kenny was a junior expert, or junior, when they were running the 650 Yamahas, my dad was his mechanic at that time. So dealership side kind of faded out, and he just went to work with Kenny.
Oh, okay. Can you explain to people what that era was like? Because I feel like, was it as serious as it is now, as far as like at that age where people were already like kind of gearing up for what they thought would be an actual career of racing, or was that just like a time period of just having a good time and somehow it ended up making money?
I think with growing up around Kenny and Skip followed, I don't know, 5-6 years later, I guess, but it was just, there was no doubt Kenny was going to be a professional racer, right? And so he was serious, always serious, training. My dad was on the road with him. Skip was the same. It was just going to evolve into they're going to be motorcycle racers. So from their side, yeah, it was serious. And I think Kenny, he started hanging out with the right guys that told him to stay away from, drinking, drugs, and all that kind of stuff, because there were some high flyers at that time.
Yeah, it was the 70s, right?
70s, yeah, exactly. But for him, he was determined he was going to be a racer, and he ended up being one of the best for sure. So.
Yeah. I always think about that, like, obviously our era is a little bit different where, you're kind of like told from a certain age you have social media and all this stuff.
Sure.
Maybe not when we were first starting, but, even then we kind of grew up in that era where you had to worry about a lot more stuff than back then. I feel like you could kind of, fly under the radar a little bit, but also made things feel a little bit less maybe serious because it wasn't like you didn't have the whole world watching right away as you were growing up.
Yeah, I think I think now there's more people more serious maybe. I think when you start as a mini bike kid, a lot of people have the dream they want to be world champion or American champion or MotoAmerica champion or whatever it might be. But back then I think it was, there were a lot of good guys obviously that were making a living out of it. It was just done in the back of vans and pickup trucks and stuff, a little bit different. So
did it seem more attainable back then though?
Again, I was probably lucky. I grew up with guys that were just going to do it, you know, so it was very obtainable for those guys. I just remember growing up, going to San Jose Mile and going to we'd go down to Ascot every Friday night to watch Skip race and Kenny race, but it was just such a big deal. I think from outside looking in, it was very special. There was a lot of competition at that time. San Jose Mile would be sold out. You couldn't park or, to get around. So it was a really cool era, And then when road racing came in, it was a similar deal.
That's what I was going to ask. Was it very common for everybody to go dirt track straight to road racing, or was it like, how was that transition? And did you have multiple bikes that you were always, or was it just a transition? You talk about how everybody rode dirt track back then. It was like such a good skill to have, but how did that transition kind of?
Well, I think if you remember back then, the Grand National Champion, it was road race points counted.
Yeah.
And so like
the Superbiker, is that?
Superbikers were a little bit different,
yeah.
But, to be AMA Grand National Champion, you rode mile, half mile, TT, short track, and road race. That's where the true Grand Slam is, or the guys that won everything. But I think, Kenny probably grew up wanting to be a dirt tracker, and, for example, and then, he had to road race to get points, and then he had to actually go to Europe because the Yamaha dirt track program wasn't happening. So
is that how that worked out? Just the Yamaha dirt track thing?
More or less. The Harleys were pretty dominant, and they brought out that TZ 750 miler to try and beat the Harleys at that time. But with their 750 twin, it was a struggle. So decided to take a show elsewhere.
And at what point did you kind of realize maybe that wasn't the trajectory you were kind of on? Like, was that early on, or you had high aspirations growing up?
No, so we had that ranch, and I would ride every single day. Either it would be with Skip or Kenny, ride mini bikes. It was pretty fun back then, as you could imagine. And I started racing when I was 8 on the Yamaha 60. Actually, my Yamaha 60 was pretty tanked out, clapped out, because I rode it every day. And so Kenny gave me his pit bike, and I started racing on that. And it was probably a year or two down the road, my parents got a divorce, and my dad moved to LA. Actually was working, I think, with Paul Carruthers' dad, Kel, and doing some stuff on the Yamaha program. And so I didn't, I was kind of left to my own and my stepdad and my mom would take me to the races and go race at Lodi. And then my dad started doing some development work for the Yamaha motocross team. And through Keith McCarthy, it was easy to kind of get, a bike out the back door. And it was easier for me to try and be a motocrosser than a flat tracker or road racer back then. So I started racing motocross, and I was pretty good in Northern California. In 1983, Kenny, it was going to be his last year and doing the Grand Prix, and he was going through a divorce and he needed somebody to train with. And so I moved in with him, and we would train every day. And then I ended up going to Europe that year with him, and I was kind of the first Uccio, as a helmet cleaner and leather cleaner. It was pretty easy then because Kenny only had one helmet and 2 shields and I think 1 pair of leathers.
They probably didn't even have tear-offs back then, did they?
They had some, but he was an AGV rider, and they were pretty tight with their stuff. They didn't have much gear. So I drove the motorhome around, and I saw what Grand Prix were, and it was like, wow, I need to look into this again. I came back, went to the Keith Code School, and here at Laguna actually, and Keith said, I was the fastest guy to go through the school besides Doug Chandler, and so he goes, you should try it. And so Kenny he wanted to build a bike that I could train on and learn how to road race, and he decided that, remember the Yamaha 550 Visions? They were a V-twin, 550, water cooled, Well, so we built this chassis in his garage, and we're building this road racer, and it was a shaft drive. And so we got all this stuff done for it. And then it came time to convert the shaft drive to a chain drive, and we found out the engine ran backwards. So yeah, so that didn't that ended up against the wall in the barn or something like that.
That's insane. That's such a weird story.
Yeah. So what happened? We ended up building a 250, and it was like the first Delta Box Type 250 Grand Prix bike. And I did 3 or 4 club races and went to Daytona. And if you remember, Wayne was a 1983 Superbike champion in Kawasaki, and they quit. And so Kenny hired him to go to Europe. And the first race was at Daytona, and me and Wayne were teammates. I was riding this thing that me and Kenny made in our garage, and he was riding a standard TZ. So I got to go to the Yamaha test. It was a week before, and first lap down the back straight at Daytona, all the right foot peg assembly just fell off, because it was, I didn't know what I was doing, and Kenny was doing his stuff, and he really didn't know what he was doing then either. He did all the linkages and stuff. I remember it had the Yamaha guys were just looking at us like, this is dangerous, And we ended up with the stiffest spring from the 680 on my 250, and it was just boing, boing, boing because the linkage was all messed up. So it was definitely an adventure. When my dad got out there, so we had a couple private days testing, and then my dad came out, and first official test, we're out there riding. I go out and do about 5 or 6 laps, and the way that Kenny made the part of the linkage it looked like a dog bone, and part of it bolted onto the swing arm, and part of it was the bottom part of the shock. So I go out and do a couple laps, and my dad's looking at this dog bone thing, and it's like worked its way off half the bearing, and he calls Kenny over, and he goes, "Hey, look at that!" And Kenny just grabbed a hammer and he pinged it back over, and he goes, "Just do 3 laps at a time." It's like, okay. So that's what we did, and then we fixed it. There used to be a day off, I think Wednesday was a break day back then, and so we ended up fixing that. And then in my heat race, it didn't shift, so I ended up on the back row of the first wave. And it was kind of cool because when I was in Europe in 83, I got to be friends with this guy named Donnie Robinson. He was a Grand Prix rider from Northern Ireland, I believe. And I didn't even know it was at Daytona, but I ended up lining up next to him on that back row of the first wave. And I ended up, Wayne won the race. I got 8th. So I was the 3rd or 4th American on this bike that we made in the garage.
And the grids back then,
it was two full waves for sure. Yeah.
So that many people were showing up like globally at that point?
Yeah, Angel Nieto, Cito Pons was there. That's
crazy.
There was a lot of foreign. That was when it was a big tune-up for the championship.
Huh.
Yeah.
And that was there what was the desire to come here versus like now? Obviously, that's not even something you remotely have happening as much. Why were people coming over to the U.S. back then versus now?
I think Daytona, like we're trying to recreate now,
Yeah.
It's just we want it to be a big international happening again, a big preseason, like the Daytona 500, I guess, is the NASCAR, but, on a more global level. And we're starting to see that with the, riders from the UK, and there's Italians out wanting to come over and stuff. So it was kind of like that then.
So it was just the allure of it being Daytona still.
It was Daytona, and I think, there's a lot better places or a lot worse off places to be in March, especially if you're in Italy or Poland or whatever, it's
and you
frozen
get a race.
over.
You get a full race.
Get a race, yeah, for sure.
And especially with the World Endurance Championship being so hot right now, and so competitive and so deep. It's pretty cool to see those guys. I know it's, seeing Yart come this year was pretty special, and hopefully it drags a few more. I know it's 600s instead of thousands, but to get that camaraderie. Yeah. Anyways, get the gel on the team.
Yeah,
I think that's got to be something it's alluring, like you said.
Yeah. So we did Daytona, and the second race that back then was Riverside, and my dad wouldn't let me ride the bike that we made again. So I rode he had worked on for Jimmy Felice, and there was a TZ250J model, which was the 82 model. So I rode that. And that was the first race that Honda brought out a 250. And Sam McDonald was the rider, and he ended up winning, and I got 4th, so I missed my podium. The third race was at Sonoma, and I was quickest in morning warm-up and ended up crashing in the carousel and broke my collarbone. And that time I only had money to do the West Coast races, and that's what I did. So I kind of got geared up for 85.
What would a race weekend cost back then? Do you remember?
It was more than I had.
Yeah.
But because of Kenny and all that, I got tires for free.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to get that, and then of course we had the bike, and Yeah, my bike's always ran pretty good. My dad ended up being one of the best two-stroke tuners in the world. You know, all the cylinders on Wayne's World Championship bikes for his 500. My dad made the cylinders, and the exhaust pipe spec was from my dad. So
That's amazing.
yeah, he ended up being one of the best at that. So my bikes ran pretty good.
Yeah, I bet. How often were you guys doing tires back then? Like, there's so many things I think about all the time, like tire warmers, tires, like
I don't think we had warmers, to be honest.
yeah.
I still had duct tape for your. There was no knee pads.
Really?
What?
Yeah,
What
we
do
used
you-
to put duct tape on your.
That's it?
Yeah,
And then,
and the Japanese duct tape was the best. It was brown.
wait, but so like how long would that last? Like a session?
Yeah,
How many laps were you guys doing?
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
that's like 40 years ago.
I know. I do. Well, these questions, I'm just like,
I know there's things I think about all the time. Like when we're teaching schools, you know, and they're like, we get guys who we'll do schools without warmers. You know what I mean? And people look
Right.
at us like we're crazy for going out on slicks without warmers. And we're like, you know, think about 40 years ago what these
Yeah.
guys were doing. You know,
Yeah,
off the line.
no, for sure. Yeah, you had to have a lot of duct tape for sure, especially if you were tall. Like you'd be in trouble.
Yeah, I'd be in big trouble.
that's insane.
That is funny. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
So from there, how long did that kind of go on for?
So I figured, back then there was not a lot of there's not a lot of factory riders then, to be honest. So I figured I'd give it 3 years, see if I could do it or not. In '85, we got a new bike through Yamaha, and Wayne was riding a 250 and a 500 Honda for a guy named, it was Bob McLean's team. Stuart Toomey was running it. Stuart was a good friend of my dad's, and he said, hey, if you want to go do the races back east, jump, you can put your stuff in the back and you can come help us out. Well, my job helping out was to be Wayne's 250 mechanic, and I had to race against him. So, again, Wayne would go out and win the race, and I would get 7th or 8th or something like that. But
Yeah.
when I'd come in from practice, I'd put my bike on the stand and start working on his. But,
I read that. I read an
Yeah.
article saying that you were doing that. And I mean, like, so how long were the sessions for that you were able to, like, have that much time? And then, I mean, were you just, like, suited up the whole time, just working?
Well, you would be out practicing most of the time. It was after the session.
Okay.
I don't think Wayne says one time I got called in to change his tire or something. I don't really think that's right. At Elkhart
Gotta
Lake.
pit. You gotta pit. You gotta get in here and change the other
Change
guy's
his tire. No.
That's insane.
But I was there by myself basically, and back then there was a guy named Bobby who was a champion spark plug guy, and my dad was doing other things, and he just said, hey, always do a plug chop and show Bobby your plug, and he'll tell you how your jetting is, and that's what I did, and that's how I tuned it basically.
That's how you tune Wayne's bike?
No, my bike.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so and then Stuart Toomey would tell me what to do on Wayne's bike.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine. Was Wayne paying you, or you just got the free ride?
I just got the free ride.
Wow.
Imagine that now. Yeah, James, we'd like to bring you back for Harley next year, but you
You
gotta
gotta-
work on Kyle's bike.
Yeah, you got to work on Kyle's.
Good luck, Kyle. I'm going to tell you right now, we wouldn't win anything.
Oh my god.
Dude, we'd be in some serious trouble.
Were you pretty mechanical? Like, was
No.
that?
And
No.
I was going to say, like, did you
Two
learn?
two strokes are fairly easy though. I mean, pulling the cylinders and top end,
Speak
pistons.
for yourself.
and all.
We could barely get the tire pressures done on our bikes. So.
And I would build my own engines. I mean, my dad would help me with all that. So
Yeah.
I kind of figured that out. But being a good mechanic, I'd say not probably.
Logistically back then, was it were the races like close together, kind of how they are now, how you guys have our calendar, or was it a little bit easier in that regard?
I remember when I did that loop back east. I think we did Mid Ohio, Elkhart Lake, and Loudon, and then came back. I think it was.
They were like 2 weeks apart kind of deal again.
Yeah, I
you're
think so. Yeah.
really-
So I was we're on the road pretty much that whole stint. From California.
I can't even imagine now we've got modern travel and semis that are reliable and stuff. You guys have a lot of issues with that kind of stuff, just like
Not that I
box trucks?
remember. No, I was a good driver.
Just driving across
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
Well, you just kind of living the dream at the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was 19, 20 years old, I guess. Something like
Yeah.
that.
And were you said you're top 10 guy at that point? That was in the 250 class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many classes? So you had 250 and 500, and
Then there was
125?
250. There was Superbike was starting. I think they called it Formula One. It's the 500 rode in. I think that was about it, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But the grids were stacked.
Pretty big grids. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And could you make money being a top 8 guy?
I think I always was 8th place, and I think it was like $600 maybe. So
So not so much.
but back then it was
Yeah,
okay,
I
you
guess
know?
back then it's all right.
And there was guys there was guys getting paid, or it was
Back then there was not a lot of guys getting paid. And that's why I kind of gave myself 3 years. And so the third year, 86, is when Yamaha got back into it. And they hired Jimmy and John Kaczynski to be their superbike riders. And I actually had an FC 752 that was like a support superbike guy. So I got all the engine kits and all that. And the only thing that I didn't have, which we found out here coming over turn one, was they didn't tell us that they were bracing the frames. So mine just wobbled like, kind of pretty scary actually.
Wow.
So,
Stiff.
and those things were real heavy on the front, and I just never really gelled with it, to be honest.
And so that was it. You were done after that.
So I did 86, probably 4 or 5 races, and that was it. That was my 3 years.
And then you transitioned from there. You obviously, did you ever do anything else after, or that was it? It was just kind of you were racing, and then you got into the other side of racing. There was no other.
Yeah, I think after that, Kenny had a dealership in Modesto, and I went to work for that for a while. And then Skip, my uncle, he went to work for Federal Express, and so he got me a job there. And it was kind of like racing in a way. You're racing to deliver packages, right? So I did that for about a year and a half, and then got back into helping the team, Kenny's team, 250 team. So
Was that an easy transition for you, like to go from being, having this? I think about it a lot, like going from that role of actually being the rider that's pretty selfish, gets to show up. And it sounds like in your case, you were never just the rider, really. But
no, I wasn't. And I kind of like both on my motocross side and probably the road racing side. I think I had the talent to do it, but I didn't put in the effort really on the training side, on the, and all that side. So, looking back, if I would have worked as hard as somebody like Kenny, I think I would have been pretty successful. But
when you say training back then,
that was running basically,
just running,
a little bit of weights. Yeah. I ride motocross bikes, but I just didn't have that I guess that determination, that focus to do it. Structure, I guess.
So when you started getting back with the team, what was your first job with the team? Did you just go right into team manager, or did you have to work what was your?
No, basically he needed a little bit. My dad was running the team, and Kenny needed some help with sponsorship and stuff like that. So I was still working. I think I was still doing the FedEx stuff, and then started trying to help find sponsors for the team, and then kind of transitioned into running the team. My dad started doing more on the Grand Prix side, because I think it was Kenny's Grand Prix team started in '86, I think. And so 86, 87. And so my dad started working on that side of things, and then I started taking over the team here, the running of it. And then I think full time on the team for me was probably 1990, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So how long was that time-wise from when you stopped actually racing to full-time with that?
3-4 years, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. And, when you talk about like sponsorship and that kind of thing, obviously you weren't emailing people. You weren't, looking on LinkedIn trying to find.
He was making a proposal and mailing it. Hope you got an answer.
That's kind of
Try and
how
call.
you to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. Just cold calling.
Yeah.
Just
basically.
looking.
Yeah.
And what kind of companies were you trying to get sponsorship from? That's.
I remember Shasta, the drinks,
Yep.
Stuff like that. So same as probably people do now with energy drinks and that. So it was colas and drinks and, whatever. He had a sponsor, Nordica, which was ski boots and all that stuff. And then it transitioned to Viceroy cigarettes, and that was tied to the Grand Prix team over there. But
Cigarette money, tobacco money, all that stuff was
Back
real
then.
big back then, right?
yeah, definitely, for sure.
Was it an easier sell back then than now, you think?
No, I don't think it's ever easy, to be honest.
What was like what were you going in there saying? Like, I mean, compared to now, okay, we have this much of a following, we get these kind of clicks.
I didn't really
metrics.
get any meetings inside, so it was easy. So, no, I mean, like I said, in the end, he was fortunate that a lot of his European sponsors stepped in to help the American team, and the premise behind that was to raise American riders to go to the big team.
So same goal as now,
Yeah,
in a
basically.
way.
Yeah, for sure.
And
And it did bring Kaczynski and those guys through.
So you brought some riders, some talent and whatnot. Thinking back to that now, like, you know, in the role you're in now, and I think a lot of people don't realize it's partially why we're doing this, is to kind of just tell people a little bit more about your background. Do you think people forget that, you know, you have that side of thing? Like you've been there, done that many years ago.
Well, you couldn't even find anything about it, right?
Yeah, I know,
it's
that's
so
what I mean.
hard.
Yeah.
I know, like when you, like, there's really nothing. Like I looked up a lot of things. Like I Googled so much trying to figure out, like, there's like no real stories.
No.
There's like no press
Maybe I
releases.
should write. I get people saying you should write a book someday, and maybe that would document it. But
JP.
huh?
That's
he
what
does.
Said
He
yesterday.
does.
He
Yeah.
said it yesterday.
Yeah.
You should write a book.
I'm sure
Yeah.
there's
It's you know, I think I'm fortunate, and because I grew up in, you know, around Kenny and all that transitioned and where it led me to. I mean, running the Moto GP team, and we built our own Grand Prix bike. I lived in the UK for 12 years, so worked with a lot of great riders and you know, great engineers and all of that. So there's been part of some fun stories, you know. But it's like you said when you started. It's kind of been under the, you know, not publicized, but I've been part of a lot of stuff.
Now, when you say you were, you know, running the Grand Prix team, what year was that?
I started on the move from the U.S. team. Well, we stopped the U.S. team, I think, at the end of the day. We went to the Weir Formula USA stuff for a while. We rode 500s with Robbie and Rich Oliver. That was because we got in a dispute with AMA back then, because they wanted to have their sticker on the side of the bike, and we argued with them that you own the number plate area, which we own the number plate now. So
I love it. I love it.
so
organizers are always such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So we quit, and we went to Formula USA. It was a weird deal. It was pretty fun, actually. We were riding 500s, and we started with 250s, and it was a class where there was no rules. So you know, we put nitrous on the 250s for a while.
What?
Yeah, hit the button because they had the lap times. Rich and Robbie had the lap times, but they couldn't, you know, the GSXR 1100 or whatever they were then. And it actually, we brought over two 500s, and it became the 500s against, I think Yoshimura built a 1280 that was running on methanol. And I mean, it was pretty
Like a rocket
sketchy.
ship.
Yeah, it was cool.
Well, I remember like sitting with, you know, working with Chuck Graves a few years ago. Like everything always
He
goes
was
back
part
to
of
that.
it. Yeah.
You know, it was like,
Yeah.
you know, back when we were doing, you know, Formula USA, we could do this, this, and this, and now we can't do anything. I'm like, yeah. Chuck, it's probably sounds like I don't know if I want to go back there. You know.
Yeah, you didn't have to worry about breaking rules.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. You couldn't get people complaining that things weren't level enough,
No,
right?
no, exactly. Yeah.
So going back to that though, like what was the jump like running an American team, obviously, then going to the Grand Prix side of things and running a Grand Prix team's got to be kind of, I mean, a job in itself. Like there's a lot more eyeballs, there's a lot more people, as well as the riders. I mean, you've worked with quite a, you know, laundry list of riders that are well, you know, huge. Like how was that? And then, you know, if you can kind of comment or, you know, talk a little bit about like working with engineers at that point, making your own bike, like those things, that's kind of crazy when, like in this day and age, like we don't see that. Like,
yeah, the working with going over the Grand Prix team, it just seemed like a natural transition for me, and I work more close probably with Kenny than any of it, because Kenny's he's a good visionary, but really to get from point A to point B, you know, sometimes the plans, you know, wavers a bit. So I think I brought some structure to that, a little bit of stability to that. And so a lot of it was just, you know, working with Yamaha and the factories, and you know, making sure parts were back and forth, and you know, then we would ship gas over Sunoco gas from here over to Europe.
Holy
we had a big gas tank in the
way.
trailer. Yeah.
And you guys how were you shipping stuff back then? Was it
sea freight?
sea freight?
It's
So
in
you're
containers,
planning months away.
Yeah,
you know,
pretty
kind of
much.
deal.
Yeah.
holy crap. And like, so what kind of a budget was a part of a team like that?
It
back
was
in the day?
back then. It was quite a lot for what it was. Yeah, I mean, Yamaha was
Like
paying
millions?
tens of millions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, that's when riders were making pretty good money too.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Corey said, you know, tobacco money was pretty strong, so they wanted to win.
And everybody's, I mean, obviously everyone's smoking at the time and just, or was
I mean, there were free cigarettes everywhere.
it's like mission chips.
Like mission chips now,
just
yeah.
everywhere.
There was no cigarettes that looked like a car or motorcycle, though.
And how many people were in the organization at that time?
I think when we were doing the 2 strokes, we had 38 or something like that, 35.
Okay.
And as a manager, were you kind of just handling the people, just putting people in places? And because you said you weren't like a super mechanical guy, so it's not like you were involved in engineering as much. Were you doing?
No, it was more just logistics, to be honest, making sure things got from point A to point B. And we had people that were there with the team before that would kind of work under me to do that, organizing tests and making sure the tire companies got what they need and all that kind of stuff. So travel, and then it evolved into when we decided to build our own bike in '96, and we set up a shop in Banbury in the UK, Oxfordshire. You probably know where that is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And moved my family over there. So we lived over there for 12 years and built a couple variations of 2 strokes and then 4-stroke, and that was pretty tough, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine that undertaking. And you guys were building it from A to Z.
A to Z, yeah. I remember Wayne came by one time, and we had our own drawing staff or drawing room, and Wayne's in the parts room, and he's like, "Where'd you get this? This, I don't know, it was like a handlebar, carbon fiber handlebar." And he said, "Well, we made that, And if you think if it starts with a drawing, and it has to be assigned a part number, because we had to run our own stores as well, our own spare part stuff, So yeah, quite a lot to it.
And do you think? I actually read, I forget who did the article. One of the GP news outlets did an article last week, a week before, talking about wishing that MotoGP would kind of go back to that era of maybe not like fully A to Z, but at least having it to where it was a little more accessible in that regard, kind of like F1 style, where you have like the similar power plant, but the chassis was kind of more.
Yeah, it would be cool, but it's tough. It was, I think, probably our mistake going into it, because the first thing that we made was a little 3-cylinder 2-stroke, and the engineers kind of argued that then you had a 15-kilo weight advantage if you had a 3-cylinder over a 4-cylinder. But all of our history was with 4-cylinder. Like I said, my dad developed, essentially the bike that Wayne was winning championships on, and I think if we made a 4-cylinder, we'd probably still be doing MotoGP now.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so crazy to hear. Like that could have been a pivotal, moment,
it was for sure. There were a couple pivotal things. There was Wayne's accident, basically changed all of our lives. And then, that decision to make a 3 over a 4-cylinder.
Why do you say that?
Wayne's accident?
Yeah.
Well, I was the manager then, and it was, we were really a family. At that time there was Wayne, Luca Catalora was, his teammate then. But we, anyway, it was a family. Kenny basically took the chance on him coming over to Europe. We kind of all grew up together in a way, and we got third, it was unusual. We were used to winning first, second. Second was a bad day. Wayne wanted to win everything, and you can still see that in him today. So when that happened, it was, we just knew it's the sponsorship, everything that had been built up to that point was going to change. And our friend was injured.
Yeah,
obviously.
of course. Yeah. And when you guys decided to go out on your own and do the whole team thing, obviously funding wise, I would imagine it's a little more expensive to go that route.
Yeah, a lot more expensive for sure, especially when it switched to 4-stroke.
Yeah, and so, do you have a figure of that, of like how much you had to bring in sponsorship wise? Because you guys didn't really have a big, I guess for a while you had some big, but it seemed like towards the end it seemed pretty difficult to get a.
No, for sure, and we always ended up stopping because we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But the, I don't want to really get in the numbers, but we. In '96, I think we ran 3 riders: Jean-Michel Bale, Norick Abbey, and Kenny Jr. And with Marlboro, it was a fully Marlboro team. And we had a similar budget to do that, to build our own bike, and basically it was a 1-year deal. So since that wasn't successful the first year, it just went right on down.
As you're spending more money, you're getting less.
Yeah, exactly. And then just when we kind of got it, at the end, our 3-cylinder, after 2-3 redesigns, it actually performed pretty well. I think Jeremy still has the fastest lap around Saxon Ring, Phillip Island, Rio, and Brazil. It ended up being the fastest 2-stroke around a racetrack. So then the rules changed to 4-stroke. we were fortunate enough to have, when we decided to do our own bike, we found a sponsor in Malaysia. It was called Modinus. It was a motorcycle manufacturer, and they had some big plans. And this was going back to '97. They wanted to use us to help develop street bikes, and so this guy had some pretty big plans. And I think it was 3 weeks after he shook hands with Kenny on the engine to sponsor the engine and call him Modinus, he got killed in a helicopter crash.
Oh wow!
And so again, all those plans changed. Nobody really understood this guy's vision, but they did honor the commitment for 3 years. And during that time, there was the guy that was the CEO of Proton Cars. He got involved in the program, and it ended up being a Proton sponsored thing at the end. So.
Yeah, I remember that was my bike in Moto GP the game
Yeah.
for a while.
Oh, was it the
Proton.
Proton?
Yeah. I remember
The
those
2-stroke or the 4-stroke?
The four.
I remember those things in the game that were like that. So hard to ride. Hard to ride. And I remember just a couple videos. I don't know, and you just see they were so violent. Like that whole era was violent.
So we had once we got the commitment for the 4-stroke, we had like a year to build it.
Holy crap!
And so, that was a huge undertaking, actually. So you talked about how big our 2-stroke team was. So with the 4-stroke, it was 80 people.
Wow.
And,
wow.
40 were back at the shop, and, the race team was about half. So.
And you were the head honcho.
Well, Kenny was still the head honcho, and he always will be the head honcho. But, but I ran the facility.
You were the one making it happen, though.
Yeah,
in that
well,
regard.
some of it.
Yeah.
Or made it not happen because it wasn't very successful. But we had some big, we had John Bernard, who developed the first carbon tub for Formula One and the paddle wheel and all that. He worked for us for 2 years, I think.
That's insane.
Some of the stuff on the 4-stroke was pretty good.
You've got to have some stories in those freaking that era. That's got to be insane working with those, like the amount of riders you've worked with.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you manage like?
Carefully.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's got to be pretty crazy. I mean, you were in the position for a long time. I mean, you've probably saw some a lot of different riders, heads, how they work. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's I guess when I started getting more involved in the riders when Wayne and Luca were teammates, because Wayne was kind of Kenny's guy, and Luca was brought in because Marlboro preferred him. He's Italian and all that. So I kind of took his side to help him, but he's very interesting. I saw him probably, 6 or 7 years ago at Jerez at a World Superbike test, and he was working with some rider, and I walked up and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he, "Hey, I want to introduce you to my rider." And he introduced me as, "This is Chuck. He was my team manager, and he hated me."
Wow.
Yeah, and which is not true. And then he started reminding me of all the stuff I would say to him. So yeah, I probably wasn't very nice.
Would you say you were like a stern team manager or
I don't know, stern, maybe misunderstood.
Okay.
Why do you say that?
No, I mean, I think the most important thing for riders is to make them feel comfortable and make sure, you do what you can to give them confidence. And I mean, one example, we were at Donington Park, and Wayne was struggling because he had crashed, and Luca had pressure on him because he wasn't actually doing very good. And his crew chief was a guy that actually John Kaczynski brought in, and so he carried over to Luca. And Luca did not like this guy. And so back then, and outside the garages at Donington, there were these chairs. And so Luca went out on his out lap, his first run. He comes back in, and he goes in the garage, and I'm sitting in this chair out there, and he walks out, and he goes, "Chuck, when I go out for this next run, I don't want to see that guy again." And so it's like, okay. And I didn't even tell Kenny this was happening. So we had a test team at that time. Warren Willing was the head up the test team. So I basically had to go get Warren, and I had to kind of let the other guy go while Luca's still out doing laps, right? And so when Luca pulled in this next time, Warren was the crew chief.
Holy crap.
He won the Grand Prix, his first Grand Prix that weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, so kind of whatever it takes to, to a certain extent. That was pretty extreme.
What did you do to that? Did you just go, "Hey, buddy,
it's not working"?
Wow.
That's how it goes, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
So I guess that's stern sometimes. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, out of all the riders you worked with, who would you say was kind of stood out as far as a talent? Obviously, they're all very talented because you're at a world level, but there's always
I think
those
the guy
guys.
that had the most natural ability over everything was Jean-Michel Bale. You know, I mean, he was a world motocross champion. Decided he wanted to road race. You know, he told me the story. He was racing here in America, you know, winning Supercross and out, you know, 500 championships and all that. And he was riding for Honda. He wanted to road race, and they didn't want to support it. And so he went and bought a street bike, and he was out and he decided he wanted to do a Grand Prix, and the French Grand Prix. And the following year, this was like, you know, 5 months before, he's on a street bike at Willow Springs, never road raced before. He's out there riding, and Eddie happens to be out there, Lawson. And he goes, yeah, Eddie come up to me and he says, what are you doing, John Michel? And he goes, well, I'm learning how to road race. I'm practicing. And he goes, oh. He goes, yeah, I entered the French Grand Prix. And Eddie's like, what? You know, he goes, have you road raced? And he goes, no. And he goes, that's why I'm practicing. And he went and he rode the French Grand Prix, and he didn't technically qualify, but they let him race. And that was the start of his road race career.
Imagine it was that easy now.
You can't, because you couldn't even enter
Yeah,
now.
you can't,
Like,
no.
it's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Hard.
hard.
You can't get a wild card now.
No, I remember my wild card was so gnarly to get.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't even, it was tough.
Yeah.
Like, imagine doing that.
But I went to his house, and, you know, we were out trials riding, and he was going up these big granite slabs. And then I didn't know, but he was like the top 3 trials riders in France.
Just
you
a
know, and he
natural
could
talent.
and they could ride motocross bikes. And it's funny, at that time, you know, a lot of Europeans would come to Kenny's ranch, and John Michel was one of them after the first French Grand Prix fiasco, because he was a Marlboro rider. It was Chesterfield and was a sub-brand of Marlboro, I guess. And so at that time, a lot of the Europeans, when they come out, I would ride with them first, because they weren't to the level of Kenny. You know, for some of them never made it to that level where Kenny could actually help them. But John Michel, we'd be out riding. He refused to wear a steel shoe then, and he would, you know, try and run around the inside all the way around, and I'd go high, square it off, pass him down the straight. It's like, dude, don't you see what's happening here? And he goes, yeah, but if I make it around the corner, I'm gonna smoke you. I said, yeah, but you're gonna fall down 90% of the time. And then at the end of that weekend, he's putting his stuff in the locker, and I went up, handed him a steel shoe, and he put it in his bag. And then sure enough, at his short track at his house, he would wear a steel shoe, and he started squaring off the corners. So it's pretty cool. Stubborn.
So when you, like, talking about all these riders, how did it work? Was it the kind of the same thing now? Like, were you as constantly scouting riders all the time, trying to bring them up, or was it like, were you getting phone calls all the time? I mean, now I feel like if you don't pick up the phone, you'll never get a ride ever. Like, I think it's really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, in the European paddock, I mean, after Wayne got hurt, you know, we hired Daryl Beatty. I don't know if you remember Daryl Beatty. So he was kind of the replacement for Wayne, and he never really got on with Dunlop tires. So yeah, you know, there was, and then as our budgets kind of started to wane, you get calls from just everybody that, hey, you know, I want to pay this to ride or whatever. So
So there's people paying to ride still.
well, wanting to ride back
Okay,
then, yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Or can you bring sponsorship and stuff like that?
And was
but
it kind of big back then for riders to bring money?
Not really.
Yeah, it was. It's
No.
kind of just been a recent.
You would still pay riders to bring money. Or
Yeah.
you would pay riders to ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that mainly the whole grid paid at that time?
I want to say just a little over half probably got
Okay.
paid to ride.
Okay. That's interesting. And then do you want to transition?
Yeah, you want to do a segment? Or?
Yeah, run it.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we talk about Law Tigers, big support of our podcast. This segment is the Law Tigers Tech Tip. Chuck, I don't know if you've actually sat. I know you listen to our podcast.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
If you make it through the halfway point, you get to the Law Tigers Tech Tip. But basically, what would you suggest? Obviously, you've got a long history of knowledge. What's the number one tip you'd suggest to a guy who's showing up to the track for the first time?
Make sure you got all your nuts and bolts tight.
That's a good one.
That is good. That's so funny.
That's a good one. At what point do you suggest safety wire?
Probably as often as you can.
Okay. All right. So
What's there to lose?
that's true. A couple bolts, I guess.
Yeah, true. Could be important ones.
The wrong one's bad.
Yeah.
No, it's funny though. Like we always talk about it. Like most of the common sense stuff. Like you think you just roll off dealership, this, that, and the other, and then you roll up to the track and you just start riding. And man, you got to be after that stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I was here Monday and some dude lost their brakes. Like anything can
Oh,
happen.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
anything can happen, and yeah, it's something where you just got to be after it.
Yeah, when we were like in 90, 98, 99, you when we were building our own two-stroke, and it wasn't very successful, the results weren't there. But I always tried to make sure that, the garage looked, it was clean. There was nothing in the area, and we were the first ones to roll out of the garage because it made you look like you were prepared. It kind of forced that you had to be prepared. So behind the garage walls was a mess, but at least it looked the part.
Look fast. You can try to go fast. Well, that's our Law Tigers tech tip. Again, if you ever find yourself in an incident on the street, please don't be afraid to call Law Tigers, 1-800-LAW-TIGERS. No cost to you as a rider, and hopefully, they get you sorted out and back on the road again in no time. So, but segueing, I guess, a little bit more into modern times. What was that like when it came time to actually, the realization that chapter was coming to an end?
Well, it was tough because we still had a staff of I want to say 25 people or whatever in our workshop in Banbury, and got the call from Kenny's manager, a guy named Gary Howard, because I used to present what we would need for money to pay the bills and stuff, and he's like, "What's going on for next year? What are you guys gonna do?" And he goes, "I got to talk to Kenny about shutting this down." And so the next day, I think it was, he goes, "Okay, we're gonna stop." And so there in England, with the employment rules, no matter what, you had to basically give them, each employee, a letter, and then have an interview with them. And then, the premise, I guess, was that you were going to, try and replace them or put them somewhere else. And so I had to do that 3 times in 3 days, even though everybody knew it was closing down. So it was pretty sad, actually. And then I was based there. So for me, what am I going to do? My kids were in school. And, we had to think about moving home.
And I mean, obviously I've been through that on a much smaller scale and not as long of a time of investment of like your life at that point was fully invested into that.
And then let alone, it's like I had to sell off everything, had to sell, we had 5-axis machines, and, we probably had a 20,000 square foot storage area that Kenny didn't really want to throw anything away. So, the heavy machine stuff I sold. We had a double-decker bus. We sold the Padgett's. You probably know Padgett's. I don't know if he still has it or not. He bought a lot of our stuff, actually. But, it filled up 8 40-foot containers that we sent to Kenny's house at the end of the day.
Wow.
So we had to do all
and
that.
He still has all that stuff?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of hard because, like, you would have, I don't know, 20 sets of unmachined KRV5 crankcases that probably cost, $2 million or something by the time you add in design time and, making the molds and, they weren't machined. But so he looks at it like that's money. But at the end of the day, it's his junk.
It's paperweight.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting rid of all that stuff. And then then we had to move our family back.
And at that point you had, I know, you have a son. I don't know how many other kids do you have?
Got a daughter. Daughter's 2 years older than our son. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so they were born and raised in England?
They were born here. She ended up graduated from the University of London. Queen Mary, I think, was the university. So she stayed after we left and graduated. Then he came home, and the systems were all different. And he kind of, got lost in the shuffle of school, and then ended up doing what he's doing. So
yeah. Can't imagine. And as far as you never went to college, I imagine you went straight from high school. You went to regular school?
Went to high school. I did 2 years of junior college.
Oh, okay.
I did some business ed stuff, and then so that was me.
Yeah, and so more or less everything.
Just live life.
Yeah, you just learned from what your experience was with racing. We talk about that a lot. I think it's like the experience you get with racing. You have to learn to do so many different things.
Yeah, for sure.
If you take all that, you could go pretty much do anything else in life, and especially if you apply that same like drive and motivation to it, you could be pretty successful.
Well, and then when I came home at that time, Gary Howard, who was Kenny's manager, it was called International Racer, still is actually. He asked if I wanted to join that and help manage riders, and so did a little bit of work with Nikki. They had Nikki, Roger, Tommy, Blake Young. I think Kevin was a part of the program then, but I kind of got assigned to Blake and Roger. When Roger did his Pedercini thing over in Europe, I did all that.
Okay.
And I'd go over there some of those races as well. And now we still have Jonathan Ray, who's the one guy I still look after. Nobody else right now.
And is that how? So you're still like an active. I mean, obviously we know you work with Johnny Ray currently, but you still are active manager, or if you kind of just stepped away from that side of things? Like,
No,
would you
it's-
take somebody else on?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I don't
okay.
think I have the time to.
Yeah.
Because that's to me it's a life commitment. You know, I mean he's a great guy. We gelled well. We fit, and you know he's part like my family too. You know, him and his family. So. Yeah, so I don't think I would do it again. I mean, I'm 61 years old now, and I don't think I need a commitment like that
Yeah.
again. So, yeah, so I came back and did that, and you know, kind of helped out Blake Young as well. And Blake kind of fired me, and then called me back right before he was going to lose his Yosh ride.
Fitting, right?
Yeah, hey, can you come to New Orleans? I think these guys are going to fire me. So it's like, sure enough, they did. It was too late by then. So, and then. I got a call. I met a guy when I was, Blake actually did a World Superbike race at Donington Park. And when I was over there, I had a call. My daughter's boyfriend was like this British entrepreneurial guy, you know, that has the handkerchief in his pocket and all that stuff. And he asked, and Kevin was with me, Schwantz. And he asked, you know, do you know anybody in the States that has a stadium for sale? I got some guys that want to invest in a stadium. And I'm like, I have no idea on that one. And I said, Kevin, he goes, no, but Kevin said, I got a friend of mine that's trying to put together a Formula One deal in Austin. And so I called, you know, this guy, Kevin hooked me up with, his name was Tavo Hellman. And so I ended up meeting him in England the night he signed the deal to bring the Formula One US Grand Prix back to Austin. And I guess it might have been like 6 or 8 months after that. It was like November of 2011. He called and he says, hey, we got the Formula One race. We got the property we're going to do this on, but I need some help. You think you could help with this? So I flew out to Austin and ended up being like the 4th person hired as part of the Circuit of the Americas. So
That's pretty crazy. And I mean, obviously your Rolodex is pretty stacked at this point in time, but
yeah, and it was, again, that was like, you know, I mean, my education's limited, but I learned as I went. And this was probably the biggest learning curve, because I just remember we were in the first meeting I went to, there was, you know, like I said, I was the 4th. The other one was a secretary. There was a finance guy and I don't know, somebody else, but none of them had any racing experience. And we're in this construction meeting, and we had a group of guys that were between the owners group and the contractors, basically to protect the owners from getting shafted by the contractors. And so we were dividing up the responsibilities, who does what. It's like my first day. And so they're like, okay, you know, there are some things the contractor do, some that the owners are responsible for. And so they start reading this list, and it was like, who's going to be in charge of temporary grandstands? And then they go, that's the owners. And I was part of the 4, and it's like, so I just had to raise my hand. It's like, I had no idea how to do that. And it was secure. It was everything, security, trash. And, you know, so I went away with medical, marshals, went away with a long list and just worked my way through it. And so the first race on that side that I was ever part of was I think it was 2012 Formula One US GP, and there was 265,000 people there for 3 days.
that's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty
Pretty
cool.
stressful.
No, because I figured I was doing okay going along, and a lot of the stuff was pretty cool because, you know, I had to hire the medical officer. And when I found this guy that was FIA approved, when I called him, he was a Team Roberts fan. So it was like, you know, all
So a
these
lot of-
connections started to come along. But they always said, if you're under control on the weekend, you'll have your hands in your pocket. And I remember Joe Campbell, who used to run here at Laguna, and Mel Harder, that was at Indy. They were wandering around together, and sure enough, I was in the paddock, had my hands in my pocket. It was going pretty smooth. So I think we did good.
And would you say that's all just because of your preparation going in? Like, was it why do you think that? Like, just you had a really good team?
I think Tavo knew that I was one of the few people, because I lived in the UK. I knew what the expectations would be. You know, I knew how Formula One worked, even though I was a Moto GP guy. And I just, at that time, I mean, a good and bad, I think, you know, I understood what it took, but I didn't really have the limitation of, okay, you can only spend this much money. I was like, this is what it's going to take, and this is what it's going to cost. So I was able to do it the right way. And again, I had enough connections, you know, either through the medical side. Medical side led me to who was our rescue guy, and, you know, in charge of the fencing. And, you know, something went wrong on the day, and, you know, he was part of the safety, what was it called, Simple Green safety team back in IndyCar. So that guy headed all that up, and so I was able to get good experienced guys to back it up. So I had a good team. Basically, I hired a good team.
And so before you kind of lucked into that with the Coda deal, what was your? Did you have a plan coming back from?
No,
England?
again, I was managing the riders, and so I went there still managing, still helping Roger, I think, and but that took precedence really.
Yeah, and was it hard to make that switch though, from going like you know how it is, obviously racing mentality wise, like you're just thinking about the next weekend or the next year or whatever, and then all of a sudden that comes to a stop, and it's like what do you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was still managing the riders while I was doing the Coda thing, but the Coda thing again, it's like FedEx. You're racing to deliver packages. This you're racing to put on an event, right? And then what followed on that was we had a World Endurance Championship, we had Australian touring cars, I tried to get an AMA Superbike race at that time. We ran basically, IMSA was there. We basically ran every form of motorsports in a 2-year cycle that you could do. So that's where it actually helped me for this, because I had the track knowledge. So when I'm negotiating with tracks or whatever, I can understand, we talk the same language there. I know their challenges, and, they'll know ours after I talk to them a lot of the times. Yeah. But it was I look back on it now, I don't know if I could do it again, but I just put my head down and charged through it,
Doing the Coda thing again, you don't know if you
Yeah.
And how old were you at that time? Like,
so what year is it now? 2024?
Yeah.
So that was 12 years ago. So I'm 62 now.
Okay.
61 now.
And you don't have to answer, might be a little bit too personal, but when you're in a career like that with MotoGP and you're in that position running a team, like that's not a corporate job, right? So you're not like 401k and all, like was that something that you were thinking about then? Like I guess I think about it as like a racer, right? Like it's like none of us are really planning in that regard. Like we're not treating it like it's a real corporate job where we have insurance and all that kind of stuff. Can you look at a job like that as a more corporate style type of thing? Like
well, the UK side with Kenny's deal, there was some benefits involved in that, because we were set up just like a normal company there. Then coming back to Coda, I mean, that was a normal company.
Yeah, of course, at that point.
So
I guess I'm asking in the sense of like, does it were you prepared for that to end, I guess, is kind of what the bigger question I have is.
Which one, Team Roberts?
Yeah.
No, not really. No, because it was such a historical team too, and you always think that it's not going to stop, right?
And you've been with it forever, like as a kid.
It's 20 years, I think I did it.
That's crazy.
Well, and then plus the kid, from growing up with it. So yeah, it was just, that was a hard transition, really. Yeah. Then what are you going to do next?
That's why
we had to move. We had to sell our house there, put everything in containers, ship it back to California, brought our pets back,
Yeah.
Which,
and so, like, when you're coming back to managing a rider, is that like is that enough money per se? Like, I don't.
It is if you manage winners.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Because I just look at it like in the U.S., it's tough. Like, there's not a ton of managers here in the U.S. Like, there's
not
one,
anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah, there's one or two, and even when I was in BSB, there wasn't really a ton of managers.
No.
And I think it's in GP, like, still, it's all still full, but I just wonder, how does that, like?
I think it's tougher being a manager now, certainly, than it was back then, for sure.
And so working with like somebody like Johnny Ray, he doesn't seem like the type takes a lot of time. He seems like he's probably pretty easy, I would imagine. Is it a lot? Is that a full-time job in itself?
No. I mean, it isn't until it is. Until he, his cycle of negotiating his agreements. I mean, this year was a little bit different because we got him out of an agreement and got him into another one, mid-contract basically. So that was a bit of a challenge. But yeah, it's, I try not to interfere very much. I'll try and go to one race a year, just to be there. I don't think I have to be there at every round. He's got a good team around him, basically. He's going through some stuff now, but I'm pretty confident he'll get out of it. And again, through my experience, to me, the rider doesn't forget how to ride. So once they get onto his liking and his package, you'll be fine. Learned that a long time ago with our Honda project with Kenny Jr. I mean, we, after we went through the cycle of our own engine, and then we did a short deal with a KTM motor, we were still building our own chassis. Then we did a deal with Honda, and we had their V5. And, we go through winter testing, and the motor was awesome. But Kenny always had this little vague feel, going in the corners. And we get to the Chinese Grand Prix, and again, I don't know why I'm sitting out on these benches outside the garages all the time, but Junior was like 15th, and Warren Willing was his crew chief, and he's saying Kenny doesn't know how to ride anymore, and Kenny's like, Warren doesn't know what he's doing, and this is bullshit, and blah blah blah. So I'm sitting out there, and Mr. Hariki was the head of HRC, and he goes, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "Yeah, great." And he explained what's going on, and he goes, "Your rider's Kenny Roberts Jr." I said, "Yeah, that's right." And he goes, "Well, he's a world champion." I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's not the rider." I said, "Well, do you have somebody here that could just take your bike and our bike and just overlay it and see where we're out?" And he goes, "Well, the guys that designed our factory bikes are here this weekend on vacation." And so we got them together, and they looked at all this stuff, and the next day he goes, "Everything about your bike is right, except your steering head is 20 millimeters higher." 20 millimeters, not much, right, at the end of the day. And so we couldn't change it for the next round, but the next race was Barcelona, and we changed that, and Kenny, I think, was on the front row, and he got on the podium.
Wow.
So
that's insane.
Well, I'm going back and telling my boys that this weekend if I'm not on the front row.
20 mil,
It's not
baby.
me.
20 mil, baby.
I've been there before.
But that was, again, an engineering battle, because we designed that bike, and Warren's protective of what he designed, and he's going to have these other guys look at it, and then
That's got to be such a constant battle, because you put your belief in an engineer, and then it's hard to be wrong, or to not.
Yeah, and that's one good thing that Kenny was actually super good at, because he still believed that, and it's harder to do now, but go out and watch on a racetrack, because that was a time where, everybody started looking at data and, lines and all that, but the interpretation of what you're looking at on the screen, especially back then, was not always what it looked like on the racetrack. And Kenny would make our engineers go out and watch on the track, just put that stuff away and go see what it's doing. So,
How I would imagine throughout that probably gave you a lot of experience with dealing with egos, and obviously racing produces a lot of egos.
Yeah.
What would you feel is the biggest thing to mitigate that when I assume you've had some bad hires over the years, there's people that don't work out, but is there kind of a key you've learned over the years to help with that?
It's hard to say. I think my personality helps a lot, because I'm pretty even keel. We had very few people that would want to leave the team, actually. And when they did, I just made it a point never to hire them back, even when they want to come back. That was just kind of my principle, I just never rehired a guy. So,
Do you think you would take that into day in life now?
Probably, because why, if you're happy, why leave? So, if you're going to come back, you're still not going to be happy, obviously.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Might not be right, but that's just how I am, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously Coda went its course. At what point did that chapter kind of close?
So I was there in my third year, and the first couple of years the first year was pretty cool, because it was new, and we did this cool thing with Formula One, and we got to experience all the other events. And then the second year, Moto GP came, but for me, it got to be a little bit boring, just because they're high, profile events, but you're just doing the same thing over and over and over. And I was sitting, I was in my office, and Wayne called, and Wayne had this bike build project going on with Richard Varner and Terry Cargis, and he called and explained what they were doing. And he goes, "These guys are wondering where the next American World Champions are going to come from." He said, "What would it cost to build a Moto 2 bike or make a Moto 2 class?" So I started looking into that for him, and then basically it evolved into MotoAmerica.
It sounds like in all of these scenarios, there are kind of things that are a little bit unbelievable when you first hear them. Like let's build our own bike from A to Z, or let's start a new racetrack in Texas from some guy from England with a bunch of money, or let's start a new race series. Like, do you feel that way when you first hear these things, or are you kind of used to operating in that realm of like, you know, and as some people say all the time, like things are unbelievable till they become believable, and that's usually when people are successful. But are you used to that?
I think I'm used to it, but when I look back, it's like, who would have thought, you know, I would have been part of all those things. You know, I would have never thought I'd ever work at a racetrack, you know, or build something to that level. I mean, think about it. How many people's first, and I was the vice president of motorsports at the first purpose-built Formula One track in the United States, and to run that event with really no experience, but I did it somehow. I didn't get fired. I ended up leaving on my own, and I think I left everybody, you know, still like me there. I'm still welcome back. It's not like we did anything wrong. So, and then, yeah, you know, who would have thought building your own Grand Prix bike? When we think we're going to build a Grand Prix bike to go race against Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki,
Yeah.
and it's just like, yeah, it's pretty incredible, really. It's been
Yeah.
a good journey. And then to run have the opportunity to you know, try and rebuild road racing back here in the States. I think we still got a ways to go. You know, I might not have been a great racer, but I was an okay racer. And obviously Wayne, you know, we still have, I don't think we'll ever be satisfied with what MotoAmerica is. And, you know, whether it's trying to bring up the mini bike program, you know, to find, you know, because I think the pool's got to get bigger to you know, find those kids that are going to go to Europe to be the next world champion. So we still got a lot of work to do there.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like you said you talked about kind of getting bored of the Coda deal, you know, after the first couple of years and getting into like more of just being a job where it's like over and over again, repeating the same thing. Do you think all those years in racing has kind of lend itself to that, where you're looking for like that ongoing kind of challenge, or just kind of like racing brings new stuff, even though you're on the same schedule or whatever, but it's like there's always new challenges. You can win everything one year, and the next year, even if you're still winning, you're trying to go faster.
Well, in this deal with the series, there's always something that you would never imagine. Will be a phone call or something happen, somebody complaining, or you know, this guy's bike's faster, when actually they're all the same. You know, you have the closest finish in history, but one guy's at a disadvantage, and it's like, okay, well, you know, how do you argue with that? Yeah.
Come on, Chuck, just a couple more percent. Come on.
But no, it's interesting. It's never, I don't think racing will ever be boring, because again, there's new challenges every day with it, and there's, you know, twists and turns every day, it seems like. So.
I mean, like, kind of just going back to what Corey was saying, like, it is kind of crazy the more I think about it, how I don't know if the words fell into some of these roles that you were in, but like, were these conversations ever like, you're crazy, like there's no way that can happen? Or were you like a dreamer yourself and kind of like, I can see it, but it's gonna take, like, I mean, it's pretty, like, you hear people all the time and you're like, I don't know about that, buddy. But like the things that you've like fallen into are like, those are like napkin paper stuff, like when you think about it.
Yeah, I think the racing stuff was pretty
yeah.
It was natural, you know,
Yeah.
it just evolved. And, you know, when we made a decision to make our own bike, I don't think Kenny ever even asked me to go. You know, I just knew that to do it, I have to be in England, you know?
Okay.
And so we went over there. I don't think he ever told me we stopped either. So Kenny's not a big hire fire guy.
Yeah.
So, but then transition again, the guys in the rider management, I mean, I worked with a lot of riders, so that was pretty simple deal to transition into. And then the track thing was probably the most surprising, you know, and to be at that level. I mean, I worked with guys like Charlie Whiting and those guys that used to, you know, he was the race director for Formula One for all those years. And to get to know all those people and to do something like as your first job on that level with that, you know, that big of a crowd, I mean,
That's crazy.
but I learned a lot, you know, and again, that just evolved into this. So I don't know, it's kind of look back and it's been a lot of different things for sure. But
I mean, it's kind of, when I sit here and look at like my life and what stuff that I've done and how things could transition, I mean, what would you say to somebody? I mean, I would say in, you know, the next, I don't know, within 10 years, my career is probably going to be looking more on the, like, ending my career or whatever. So like, what do you say to people like in our shoes that are kind of racing and coming done? Like, just things kind of just fall into it, or you just...
Well, I think a lot of it, you kind of make your own breaks in a way, you know, follow your passion, follow something that I mean, I'm never going to get sick of this. I got tired of running events at COTA,
Yeah.
but because that turned into more of a regular job. But find something that's going to keep you challenged, I think.
That's cool. That's really cool.
What about like when you started looking at the MotoAmerica thing more seriously? Had you been following AMA? Obviously, you said you managed Blake. I didn't know that kind of stuff. So you're somewhat paying attention to what was going on. But how far removed were you from American racing at that point?
When I was in Europe, I was pretty far removed. When I moved back, I think the first time I came back and Ron Heben, who works for us now, kind of reminds me of this. I mean, because our budgets were going down, we started making parts for superbikes, and we would make swing arms, kind of the John Bernard style, which like Stamboli and those guys do it now, machining from a big, huge block of aluminum. So we were doing that, a long time ago. And so I'd come back to a couple races Ron was my customer with American Honda. And so I saw it kind of, I would hear all the controversy and stuff when they went away from superbikes, production bikes. And then when we came out to the last Laguna, which was with Moto GP, I mean, at that time, we actually came out, me, Wayne, the first time I met Richard and Terry, and we were actually talking to Dorna about a couple things. We wanted to make a reality TV series about bringing up the next world champion. And then also at that time they had 3 GPs or 2 GPs in World Superbike race, about how we could do this Moto2 class within their 6 races or 3 races or whatever it was then. And so, but walking through the Superbike paddock, the AMA paddock, then it was like guys like Danny Walker were talking about going to race BSB, and nobody knew what the future was. And I think that might have been the year that there was only 4 races, and then John put on 3 races or something like that. So it wasn't a lot of enthusiasm walking through it back then.
So you came into it kind of, that was your like, well, we got to do something.
Yeah, and I think if we hadn't, I don't want to, I don't know, it's hard to say if there would be a series.
Well, no, I mean, I think about it all the time, because you get obviously people online that
yeah,
say what they say now, but it's like, I truthfully don't think that it would have existed, because I don't think, I mean, you see what's even going on at AFT now is it's getting to be, tougher and tougher. So it's like, had that gone, somebody didn't come in and put some life back into it, what would have happened?
Yeah. And I think it was fortunate, Wayne had the passion for it, and Richard and Terry, it's a big commitment for those guys too. I think we're fortunate we came across those guys that, I mean, there's been a lot of money spent to get where we are. And, but
that was actually one of my questions. I was curious how, you don't have to say obviously exactly, but could you give a ballpark for people that don't understand exactly how much you guys are actually putting into this? Because I think that's a lot of it too, is people just don't really get it,
Yeah, I don't want to put a number on it. I think it would surprise a lot of people, but I think the positive thing is you could see light at the end of the tunnel, where eventually it's gonna have some return.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's taken 10 years and it's not profitable yet, but it's, every year it gets less of a loss, and you could start to see where it could be pretty good.
And what was the plan coming into it? Like, was it like we're going to have to do this for 10 years, or was this like a 3 or 5 years?
I think the thing that we underestimated the most was getting fans to the racetrack. I mean, because coming from COTA, that front grandstand, I think it's 9,500 people. I mean, it's just right there in the front straightaway. And to get 9,000 people at a, MotoAmerica Superbike race, you thought would be a slam dunk. And it's taken a long time to get 9,000 people at an event.
Yeah.
Over 3 days.
And do you think some of that's the transition in technology with like social media and stuff? I mean, one of the biggest things that MotoAmerica, I would say to its credit, besides the series and all, is the social media presence has gone through the roof. You guys just crossed over 1 million followers on Instagram. I mean, you're a serious player in the motorcycle world specifically, but like when you look at, besides MotoGP, all the other platforms, you're probably the second biggest platform, really.
On YouTube, we're the number 2 most watched motorsport behind NASCAR.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
US,
That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
So timeline wise though, did you guys have coming to it like I guess what was your plan when you guys picked this thing up? Was it like, we're going to do this for 10 years or 5 years and give it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, we're going to pack it up, or what?
I think the plan was, and it still is how do we get a rider over to Europe?
Yeah.
I think that's the core of it still, and it's not that we worry about it every day, but we think about it every day. How are we going to get guys over? And not everybody. I mean, if you have 100 kids, maybe one will get over there, but also to create opportunity where riders like yourself and James could still make some money doing this, because that was gone basically.
Yeah,
100%.
And so, that's kind of a byproduct of trying to find an American, to go to Europe.
Yeah.
So
has that, I know that's always been you guys' goal, is to generate talent to go to Europe. Has that shifted a little bit to become a little more inward in the last few years, in terms of, yeah, sure, it's great if we get somebody over there. That's our long-term goal, and if we do a great job here, people will see that and take it. But focus a little bit more on, like you said, just trying to create jobs. More or less.
Yeah, I think it's evolved to both. I think mostly we want to make sure that we have an opportunity there for somebody to progress and move forward with their career. And if they don't make it in Europe, there's opportunity here as well, and we'll welcome that. You know.
Do you take that Joe Roberts like as one of your guys?
He was our first champion. Yeah, for sure.
And he's doing really well, and I think it's kind of cool. You'd love to see him on a GP bike.
Yeah, I mean, he might not want to be claimed by us. I don't know, but he, he was our first champion, so we'll take it.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, and
could you see him on the GP bike?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think if anything, Moto GP, that the teams over there don't look out enough, and you got a lot of guys running around in that class that have been there for a number of years. That why not take a chance on somebody else? I mean, the way the bikes are and stuff, you're only going to be so far behind before you start to learn it. So why not throw a Joe in there and take out a Spanish or Italian guy that's been there for 10 years that finishes the same every week.
I mean, as Americans, we need it.
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody to root for. I think it's crucial.
And I think the series needs it.
I think so as well, especially when they come back to America and things like that. Yeah, I would agree with you with that. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest challenge has been coming into this? Obviously, you said you underestimated getting fans of the track. That's one side of it, but otherwise, I would imagine dealing with teams in general has to be an ever ongoing challenge.
Dealing with the teams in the beginning, because we kind of came in from the European side, to me it didn't make sense. And as there were American Honda had a development program that was different than World Superbike program, that was different than Japan, and it's like, why didn't everybody just do the same thing? And you could use hand-me-down bikes, or you don't have 3 different development budgets going on. And, so it's following more of the European rules. It kind of shook everybody, because even with the R6, there were guys doing different things here than we're over in Europe, and we get in arguments over that. And it's like, well, the same bike runs, but I think once everybody kind of understood the direction, and, it's been accepted, I think. So, but that was hard, getting the rules. I mean, when we announced it, I think it was early September, that we announced that we took over the series, and there was no rules, no schedule, no staff, no nothing in the first, we ended up having the first race, I think it was March or April. So, yeah.
No, I mean, it's overall it's been great. What would you say do you have any regrets on things like that you guys did that were, looking back on it, you're like, that was a bad idea, I guess? Obviously everything's learning, so you kind of chalk it up to that, but has there been anything major that could have saved you a lot of heartache?
I don't think so, to be honest. Again, with Richard's support, if you remember our first year, we had Fans Choice doing some of the coverage, and we had an hour delayed show on CBS. And then with Dorna's help, they moved MotoGP to BN Sports, and we had a deal with BN Sports for 2 or 3 years. And which during that period, they had some rights that we didn't have for our own content. And, thanks to Richard, and I think he's right. And I think this is why Doug's able to do what he's doing with the social media, and we're able to spread our content out over many different areas. Is, we decided to control our own production, do it ourselves. And so, and to me, when people say, how are you going to know if it's successful? From the beginning, I would tell my friends or family, it's like when I say involved in MotoAmerica don't have to explain what it is, and that's less and less every day now. Now it's like, wow, really? So now you see it at bars on Mav TV, or you see it on Fox Sports, or if you want to watch 3 days, you look at Live Plus. We have our own fast channels that we've created, Motorsport 1 and MotoAmerica TV. So it's kind of hard to not be able to find it. And then, we put the races up on YouTube, after a while. So I think having the ability to do that's probably been the biggest thing that's changed us.
And what kind of investment is that to do the whole TV thing? Like, obviously you guys have I see the Game Creek trucks and that kind of stuff, so you guys are rolling 3 trucks around, three or 4 production trucks to every race for the whole season.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But then overall, like, what else does that actually take to take that production in house?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest single expense, to be honest, for the whole series. And again, that's I think, eventually we hope that that's going to pay for itself, and it is getting closer, but it's the right way to do it. And again, thanks to Richard, understanding that and believing that himself, because it is expensive. Our TV budget is big, but I think we do it right. And I think, if it's kind of the thing where you half-ass it, then you're going to get criticized rather than thanked for at least getting us some coverage.
Yeah.
Well, we still get
criticized no
complaints
matter what.
anyway.
It's crazy.
That's where I was going down this route, is just because I don't know, and maybe the people that are those guys criticizing won't listen to this podcast. But
I don't care if they do,
right,
to be honest.
But regardless, I think it's important for people to understand, though, like, we know because we're here and we see it every week in, week out, but it's not some big corporate company. You guys don't have, how many people are on the production team? Do you know?
For the TV production,
Yeah.
I think on a weekend with the cameraman and all that, it's over 50.
Yeah. But it's not an NBC special. You guys don't have.
No.
I think it's.
We have 6 commentators.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a motorcycle series.
Yeah, definitely. And so beyond that, you guys don't have a network. It's not like there's like a main hub or something. How does that actually work? Where does everything go? Who manages that stuff internally?
A guy named Larry Myers, kind of the production guy. We found him from BN. He was doing it, the logistical side of it back then. Again, another thing that kind of falls into my wheelhouse. When we lost BN Sports, it was like, who's gonna find the TV placement? I just started calling people. And so I ended up in charge of that too. So me calling Fox Sports, or me finding who the contacts was, and that was, again, just pick up the phone and do it. So I still do that part of it. I contract the announcers. Larry takes care of all the logistics for TV production and all that. So it's all edited and done in the truck. We have access to all the content. It's all ours, basically.
Yeah.
So if Doug needs it, or for social media, it's all accessible.
And how many people is MotoAmerica as a whole?
I think it's 16 or something now.
So that's pretty lean.
Pretty lean, yeah.
16 full-time people, and obviously a lot of subcontractors and stuff like that.
Yeah, race, it balloons up quite a bit, obviously.
And I think that's probably the most common misconception that people don't realize is, like, you guys, you see
small.
MotoAmerica, and you guys have done such a good job at making it seem bigger than it actually is in reality. That's really what you've done. Like, you've done a great job at a finished product that looks really good, to the point where people think it's a big thing, but it's actually not.
No, it's a little office in Irvine, California that, starting with COVID, not a lot of people are there anymore. So,
You
got
get
a lot of remote workers. We're at the races together, more than we are in the office. So.
That's crazy, because you get everyone's like, oh, they're making so much money. I think there's just such a
We spend a lot of money.
Yeah. And you give a lot of people jobs. There's a lot of people I think that should be a little bit more thankful and about, hey.
Just in our Superbike purse, we have a premier deal, and we pay purse too. But for the year, it's just over $1.3 million.
Yeah.
Just in one class.
Does that come from more of like a GP style thing, like taking that from
my experience?
Yeah. And how that works, and to keep people engaged the whole season instead of just coming in for 1 or 2 races at a time and
it's
leaving.
some commitment that the money's going to be there eventually.
Yeah.
It's going to be there. So where depending on results, sometimes you get 0 and sometimes you'd make a couple grand. So it's just a little bit better way, I think, to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the
And
money that Moto GP teams are getting paid now, it'd be nice to have that
I know.
here, but
it's like a couple million, isn't it? A top team or something
I
like
think
that.
it's 4.
Oh,
They have
wow.
4 per rider. So,
Oh, wow.
last I heard. But yeah, it's I would like to grow that system, but maybe when we start really doing well, we could expand on that. But there is some commitment back from the teams, having the right presentation, the right. So we ask something of them as well. So I think it's good.
Do you see do you think the next step comes from like a big TV deal, or do you think it's just continue the growth of where we are, and like where does that bubble come up? Like
I think a big, if we got a network obviously behind it and put some money behind it, that would be a huge advantage for us. Or having the right agency that could help with sponsorship or promotion. I mean, we've got it to this level, and I think we've done a good job. But there's still another gear to hit, and whether that's really in our wheelhouse or not, it's going to be hard to say. But it's again, we're not going to stop reaching for the stars, I guess.
What's your metric for a good year? When you guys look at that, obviously you can look at a lot of different things. You can look at attendance, you could look at teams that showed up, entries, you could look at
It's really all of it, to be honest. We look at all those things, and thankfully it has grown in all those different areas.
Yeah.
Attendance has steadily improved. We have some pretty major races now. Mid-Ohio is going to be a good race. I mean, we're outgrowing paddocks with our with the number of entries that we have, which is good and bad. We don't really have enough time in the day to run all the classes in one round, so that's why we got to split up the classes. Not ideal, but it's what you got to do. So more outside industry companies coming into it. So all those things we look at. Social media.
that was another question I wanted to ask was entries. Obviously this year, continually we see record number of entries, so on and so forth. At what point do you feel like maybe that isn't the better metric in terms of like, is it better to have quality over quantity, I guess is my question. What point do you hit that threshold?
No, and I don't disagree with what you just said, but and I think there's a big play to which would help the entertainment value of our series is not to have so many classes per day. If you go to IndyCar race on a Sunday, they'll have a couple feeder classes, but there's a huge break in the day and it's one race, and it gives fans more time to do things more. We have a lot of entertainment at the races, but if you just got bikes going around track all day, it's what kind of separates you from a club race, so we want fans to have more time with you guys, the riders, and experience the grid longer. Like at Daytona, I think we have a 40-minute grid, and to me that's cool. Guys are out there and it's packed, and so yeah, there are some things like that we think about for sure.
Yeah.
I mean now look at here at Laguna, we have 2 classes, we have to split sessions.
Yeah.
So is that ideal? Probably not. So, but it's a tricky one. So do you give up entry revenue for the show? And
that was my next question. I mean, how much of that, comes into play? Like when you look at a budget, does it move the needle?
Well, maybe not by itself, but if you take that in consideration amongst other things, it certainly doesn't help.
Yeah.
Anytime you're taking away revenue, it's not good.
Sure. I think of it in the sense of, I forget where I read it, but just making stars is a lot more difficult when you have so much to cover, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's
for
great
sure.
racing in all the classes. That's not the argument, but it's just, when the racing in Junior Cup is just as good as it is in Superbike or better.
Yeah.
It's hard to make an argument for the stars that you're trying to make in Superbike that's at the top.
Yeah.
So and aside from that, it kind of goes into the next question, I guess, is club racing in America is way different now, right? And so how much do you guys look at that as because without club racing, how is there a ladder system? Like what do you guys see as an ideal ladder?
I think we need to be more involved with the clubs eventually, so that some of the rules and some of the classes are consistent with what we're doing would certainly help. When we first started in 2015, I guess it was, we did have a meeting at the AMA with all the clubs and, kind of put that forth. And but probably to our detriment, we didn't keep up on it as much as we probably should. But I mean, we had our own battles going on, to be honest. You know?
Yeah, no, and I think about that all the time. Every time you guys announce you're doing something new, I'm like, holy shit, how much more could they put on their plate? You know, I mean, knowing that you're not hiring 5 more people for every one thing you take on, you know.
No, for sure. I mean, like our big project is the mini bike thing now, Mini Cup, and we got some good support from Mission and Motul, and we got some contingency money, but I don't know if it's a sign of the times. I mean, we have a lot of clubs across the country that are helping run qualifiers for a national final we're having at RoadAmerica, but they're only getting 20 entries. So, but so there's, well, that's kind of a waste of time. Well, it is, but if you don't start, how do you build it? So start with 20.
You need consistency.
That's what I think the biggest thing that in general with club racing is missing is just like there's no consistency, even schedule wise. It's like why would a club series schedule a weekend in the same region as a MotoAmerica round on the same weekend as a MotoAmerica round? When you do things like that, it's like you're not really. You're not working together. It's not we don't have a big pond to fish from, right? So it's like everyone's got to kind of get in the same boat. Do you think with the youth side of things, we talked about a little bit in the last one with Bobby that we did, do you think that there's gotten to be too many steps on the ladder, like where it used to be like a guy like Bobby Fong, he was I think 14 or something we talked about, and he got on 600s at like 14 years old. He had to maybe lie about his age or something to get on a bike because he was too young for insurance down south or something like that to get on a 600 type of deal. But there was no 2 years in Junior Cup or 4 years in Junior Cup, and then 2 years in Twins Cup, and then a year in Super Sport, and then Stock 1000, and then eventually maybe Superbike if you're lucky. Like it was like if you didn't cut your teeth in Super Sport and you weren't good, you're out.
Yeah.
And where you really came from was we were nationals or whatever, AFM or whatever. But I remember like if you couldn't run in the top 3 at Weird Nationals, you can't show up.
Right.
Like you just can't even. You're not competitive. Like you won't even make the grid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I think what we're trying to build, especially with the Mini Cup, and then we have our Talent Cup coming in, and then that Talent Cup, there's some slots allocated to try out for the Red Bull rookies. At least on that direction, it gives the kids that aspire to go that way if they want to. There's an opportunity there, and if they don't, then at 14 you're a Talent Cup guy, 15 you could be Twins, 16 Super Sport, 17 Stock. So I think our ladder progression is okay. Yeah, I never thought about there being too many steps, but I think with the that progression from a Junior Cup or Talent Cup bike to a Twin, it used to be like something like that to a 600,
right,
which is a big step for a 15-year-old or whatever. And then to a super bike or 1,000. So I think our ladder is not bad for developing experience, and I think even now in Moto GP you can't ride Moto 3 until you're 18 years old now.
Right.
Or Moto 2. So I don't know. I think that's going to help us with the ages getting pushed up a little bit. But yeah, like go back to when I rode a 250, and the next step was a super bike.
Right. That's my point, and it was kind of like in that era, it kind of made the cream rise to the top a little bit in the sense of like you had to either develop and make that step, or you didn't, and you got left behind.
Yeah.
Which
you went to driving a FedEx truck.
There you go. How much this new program with that you guys just announced with KTM, are they actually involved in it?
No, we've tried since we started to figure out how what program would work, and Dorna's tried to help us get deals with Honda. We had a lot of discussions last year with KTM because they have obviously the rookies, and they have a Northern European Talent Cup bike, which could have been a good transition up through the ranks, and they have through their works teams, they got Moto 3 teams and Moto 2 teams and all of it, but they decided at the last minute not to do that. Kramer started discussions with them, and KTM had actually recommended a 350 motor because 450's got too much torque and doesn't replicate what an actual Moto 3 bike is. They thought the 350 would do that, and then Dorna for their Talent Cup programs don't really recognize a production-based bike, and that's why our Junior Cup could never be a part of it. So the Kramer is a bespoke, track day race bike, and they've been testing the first one over in Europe already, and for us, I think it's going to be 50, 55 horsepower light. It's going to be close to what if that kid that has opportunity to go from that to the Red Bull rookies, at least he's going to be probably it's going to be a better bike than the rookies bike, I think. So, it's going to give him a better chance over there.
That's what I've been thinking a lot about, especially since we did that one with Cam P. We did a podcast with Cam P, and he was just talking about, all the kids that have gone to Rookies Cup. Maybe it was SDK. If you're looking now, like me, Hayden Gillum, Jake Gagne, I don't know if Cam P never made it as a rookie, but Skoltz was a Red Bull, how much that program in itself, even not even getting to Moto GP or Moto 3 or whatever, just in general across the world, all the riders that have been through that program.
Well, I think like when JD and Cam and I think Benny Solis was one too over there, Hayden Gillum. I think it was just unfortunate that now to me it seems like there's a real press to get some diversity away from just Spanish Italian riders in MotoGP, and especially with Liberty taking over Dorna, if all that works out. To grow MotoGP, I think they got to have some Americans and more Australians, and so it's hopefully our Talent Cup program will help that a bit.
Yeah, I'm hopeful too. I've been thinking a lot about the same thing. Like, how can you better prepare kids to go qualify for the Rookies Cup? Because that's realistically the easiest way to actually get into the World Championship.
Yeah,
it seems.
I mean, like we could go back with Cameron, with Bobier and JD. At that time, I don't think that push was on to have an American.
No, not at all.
And like if they were doing that now, I think they'd have a ride the next year in the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, was it JD that won the championship or Jake?
Jake did.
Won?
Yeah, I think they both did. Maybe. Yeah. Did Jake win?
I don't remember. I don't.
JD?
The MotoGP Rookies Cup. One of them won it. I know for sure.
I know one has a belt buckle. Won a race.
Yeah.
And JD's got a belt buckle.
Yeah. No, I think it was Jake that won the championship. But it's like, when was the last time a Red Bull Rookies Cup guy that won the championship didn't make it into the World Championship?
I know,
like,
that's crazy.
That's unheard of.
Yeah.
And
it's
then
just different times.
Different times for sure. How much, if any, interaction have you had with Liberty Media?
When we were at COTA, when we had the King of the Baggers race, that was all announced just before them, and we just basically made an introduction so they were aware of MotoAmerica, which they weren't really until they saw the baggers on TV. So we just wanted to, introduce ourselves more or less, and so we haven't really had any discussions with them since. But at least they know who we are and they know what our mission is, and we know that we're, if they want American riders, we think we're the conduit to developing that for them. So,
and do you know, with your relationship people in Europe, do you know how much they're actually like involved already in that and stuff with?
I think there's a lot of legal stuff with the European Union, to make sure there's no monopoly or something like that, and I don't think any of that's gets passed until the end of the year. Something like that. So they're really not involved. Or I don't think they're supposed to be involved. So I guess is a better way to say it. So, I think they will be, but
yeah, of course. Hopefully, see what they've done with F1. I guess leading towards the end of our session here, what how far are you guys looking? Like, what is your synopsis for the future, I guess, if you will? Like, what are you looking next year? Are you looking next weekend? Are you looking 5 years? Like, do you have that kind of perspective?
I mean, right now my main job is to get a schedule for next year, and hopefully I'll do that within the next month. So that's a year-to-year thing. I'll start looking at TV. We have our agreement with MAV runs through next year, but I'll start now to kind of look forward for stuff like that. We discuss a lot of different things, at random times. We talk about having more races, but we're also conscious of what the paddock could actually afford to do. That's probably the biggest reason why you don't see us at 12 or 14 rounds, because nobody could do it, essentially, but not unless we're paying, putting out a lot more money. Yeah. And it costs us a lot of money per event as well. So we've talked about having a sub-series to give some of the lower categories like Twins and Junior Cup or Talent Cup or, Stock 1000, a different place to race away from this level, just to have more racing. So there's a lot of different ideas, It's hard to enact on them because you're trying to focus on what you're doing as well. But, it's just to continue to grow the series, really,
Do you think, maybe this is too far ahead, but is there a plan, like, eventually to build this up to sell it? Like,
or is it just to continue to run it and build it as best they can, make it, a lot? Like, is there
the reason we got involved was not to build it up to sell it, and I think we want to make it the best it could be, and if an opportunity comes along that with a partner that could actually help enhance it, then definitely it would be looked at. But like I said, we're fortunate to have a good partner with Richard and Terry, and their objective is not to sell it. They're passionate about it.
That's awesome.
But again, if a Liberty Media or somebody like that came in that could really, I think our weakest point is probably not having the horsepower to go to a Fox and say you need to put this on Fox.
Yeah.
We don't. NASCAR have, or AFT have that leverage because of Jim France and the NASCAR group. We're kind of, self-grown. We're in this, but so if there's a entity out there that could help benefit, it's not monetarily, but help develop the sport to another level, certainly that would be a good thing to look at.
I think that's good to hear.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, is there, like a strategy in place when you go in front of these people, like you said, like, going to Fox and saying we want to get on TV? Is there something like a deliverable you're trying to meet? Is it we need to get more households on TV, or like what could help to actually get that to happen? To, like James was kind of asking before, like what is that bubble? What do we need to do in general?
Yeah, I think if you can get on a true network, you're just going to get more eyeballs on it.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have 1 million viewers per live race. Certainly more people would see it, more people would recognize it. It's got more value for sponsors. I think we do a good job building our audience without having, a major network like that. Our ratings on MAV are good. Our Fox ratings are good. Combined everywhere, we have a lot of people watching. But again, a lot of it's perception too. Especially in this day and age, it's a lot of people don't even watch network TV anymore. They're watching it on YouTube, or they're watching it through streaming. So that's part of why we're developing our audience in a lot of different ways that we can control, rather than just going to an NBC or ABC or something like that.
What is like the most common criticism that you, I guess, take to heart from people? What is it that keeps you up at night, I guess, before you go to bed, that you wish you could do better?
It's not balancing super sport better.
tell that to Richie.
Oh, dude,
What keeps me awake at night? Not a lot. Again, I think we just try and improve. Keep moving the goalposts. Keep making it more accessible and bigger. It's I don't think there's anything that really keeps me up at night, to be honest.
When you talked about like building the calendar for next year, I know obviously this year we had some changes with our schedule, and not necessarily like a public reasoning for that. Can you talk at all about what goes into deciding to re-up with a track or not? And I know a lot of people don't realize like how profit splits work and all that stuff with the actual tracks, whether you guys have to pay to come or they pay the series or whatever the case is. What goes into that?
We've been 10 years, so the first thing is the tracks that we have some consistency and the attendance is growing year after year. We want to try and keep the dates, and I think we're fairly successful in that in most parts. But where we aren't, then it turns into a real shuffle because one thing affects the other, and then I try and keep the calendar so that you're not crisscrossing America multiple times. I would say the calendar for me is one of the hardest things, to be honest, because all it takes is one track to say, we're going to put this event on this date, and you could have the middle of August and somewhere where you don't want to be, so it kind of messes it up. And then on the other side, we are getting more popular. So, some of the facilities that we've gone to in the past, we either outgrown or, we need bigger ones to continue the growth. And that's part of the reason why we go to COTA now. I mean, when we go there, it's a huge facility. It might look empty. We did have a lot of people there last year. They were all inside, but, that's certainly we could grow there, So, that's definitely part of it.
And do you see a track like VIR or Pittsburgh, coming back on the schedule when you I know you talked about how you go with not rehiring people when you fire a track? Do you bring them back or?
Well, VIR, I mean, we love the people there, Connie and Kerrigan. They've always been good to us, and that's exactly what happened to us. We didn't plan to leave VIR, but they, decided that time of year when we would traditionally go back, they, wanted to put one of their other events there. So then it shifted. Well, you guys could have this, and it just wasn't going to work out. Our goal is to get back to VIR. We would like to, and so we're working on that. Pittsburgh's a little bit different scenario. It's like, we love the track. We've invested in it. That chicane we paid for ourselves, to help that. But it's pretty limited on the growth side. There's a lot of people there, but it looked like there was a lot of people. There was a lot of people, but could you double that? Probably no, because there's no place to park for one. There's not enough spectator viewing. So.
Oh, okay. So you have to look at. Obviously you've got to look at quite a difference. Different things when you're looking at a track and re-upping. Could you double it, whatever? Because when we were there at Pittsburgh, I was like, holy crap, this thing is banging.
Yeah.
But I guess when you're looking at projections, hey, we need to grow this thing, and if you can't, that's got to be huge. Like, you got to year over year grow.
And then I think we're fortunate that Mid Ohio, that opportunity opened up, and that is going to be a much bigger race than Pittsburgh. And it's an hour and a half down the street.
It is. It would be nice in some regard to have, if you had all those East Coast tracks, because for the first time you'd really have like 6 or 7 tracks within basically, and call it like
it's good if
12 hours.
It's good if you're an East Coast guy.
Yeah, no, for sure. But just in general as a series for fans, right? That's kind of, I think, one of the things with BSB, at least from what James has said and from other people, is just like you can drive to every race within 3 hours. So your fan group can go to multiple events and attend multiple events and so on and so forth. It's kind of a nice thing. But what about California-wise? Obviously, California is the biggest market for motorcyclists and the industry's out here, but there's only one race.
There's just no tracks.
There's just no tracks, I guess.
No tracks. You go to Thunder Hill or Button Willow or Willow Springs.
Have you guys looked back again at Sonoma or anything like that? Or
not really. Tyler O'Hara was talking to me about that Brainerd, I think. Should we go back and look at it? We went there, I think, 2 years, and part of the problem with the situation we're in, when we're renting racetracks and they start to see you're bringing in people, they just start increasing the rent on you, and it just kind of got unsustainable for us. So I think they have new people there now. We might visit it, but again, they're part of the planning. Could you do a Ridge, Laguna, Sonoma? I don't know if the markets would do them all close. That might involve some crisscrossing.
Sure. And as far as like the marketing and promotion side of things, I think also people don't realize that you guys do most of the marketing for the events now, right? It's not a lot of tracks that are doing the marketing themselves anymore.
No, a lot of kind of our model is either we rent the facility or we have a rev share model, and which I think in both cases we pretty much put the promotional dollars forward to market the event.
And again, you don't have to give us actual figures, but could you say what it actually costs? And is there a demand, or not demand, but do you feel you could do even better if you had more in that sense? Like, is that what's kind of missing from getting more people to come to the track too, is just not having enough juice on that side?
We spend on the promotional side, every race that we promote, we spend well into 6 figures.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
But it's so hard to reach people, these days. You got this and, 3 different social media platforms. You got TV, billboards, radio, and, how much can you spend to make a dent? That's difficult.
And where is it best spent too, is I guess the hard part.
And now there's so many tricks with algorithms and stuff. I don't know a lot about that. We have, marketing and promotional department. We got agencies that help us, but it seems like that changes so much all the time that,
how are you on the next thing?
How are you on the next thing? How's this ad performing? Are you keeping an eye on it? If it's not, you got something to, push in there. So you needed a pretty extensive set of ad creatives just to test. So and that all costs money.
Yeah, and you've only got 16 people full time to do all this. That in itself, I think, is enough for people to kind of take a second look and go, wow, you're doing a lot with a lot. And I don't know how you balance it all either. James and I talk about the things that we're doing, which is riding motorcycles, running a podcast. I have a clothing brand, and I do a little bit of other stuff. I can't imagine running. You've basically got 5 different businesses in one.
Sort of, and I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but it's the same with running Kenny's team, or this, or Coda, or this. I've never I don't think I've treated any of it like a job. It's just my way of life. And so whether it's a Sunday or, I mean, me and Wayne talk probably 3-4 times every day. You know, and sometimes he'll give me the weekend off, or I'll give him the weekend off. But generally, we'll talk to each other at least one of the weekend days. So, but it's, you know, it's just what I do. So it's not, you know, it's not a 9 to 5 by any means.
Yeah, I don't think it can be.
No.
I mean, it seems like a lot of the successful people it really can't be.
No.
You know, you've got to be in it. And what's great is it sounds like you love it, and the people you have on board love it too. So,
Well, I've been in it since I was 3.
that's awesome.
So.
I guess the last kind of thing after sitting here for almost 2 hours with you, and knowing that there's not much on the internet about you, maybe because a lot of the stuff was before the internet was really as big as it is. But I mean, even still in the last 20 years, you've done a lot of stuff that your resume is quite extensive. Is that by choice that you're a little bit reclusive about your history and the things you've accomplished?
I'm just not a self-promoter, I guess. I haven't felt the need to go out and say I did this or this. So just how I am.
Yeah. I mean, I think to an extent you probably deserve a little more recognition than you get. I think people, should respect you as in general for what you've done over the years, but also just in general with what MotoAmerica has done, and that also you're not just some idiot running the show.
Well, I think that people, once they realize, like especially the younger generation, obviously that like all the guys you talk to, like JP, and then like everyone knows you, right? But like I think there's definitely there's
a point where that stops.
There's definitely a point where that stops, and they don't know the things that you've done, and hopefully this educates people a little bit. Like, hey, I mean, you've been in motorcycling a long time, and you've done a lot of things to help you kind of get to this point where, I mean, you literally take all the pieces that you've done, kind of prepared you in a way, if you had a road map now, looked back, to run a series.
Yeah.
I
would agree. Yeah, for sure. Been on both sides of the fence and pretty much everything, I guess. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, we got one last question. I don't know. So you've listened to our podcast or no?
I have.
Fully?
Yeah. Most of the time. When I'd listen to them, I'd listen to them.
So you know what's coming then.
The last meal?
Yeah. Death row meal. Well, so you're on death row probably. I don't know why you're on death row.
Because nobody knows about me, and maybe there's a reason.
All right. Well, you're on death row for not balancing super sport. And
that's Teague's fault.
Yeah. What's your death row meal? Like, what's something you've lived in a lot of places? Your death row, what's your death row meal?
I think I make a pretty good sous vide ribeye. I have a sous vide at home. You know what that is?
No, I don't.
Where you basically cook your meat in water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in a plastic vacuum sealed bag, and then it's cooked at a certain temperature. Then you go out and just char it, seal it off and eat it. It's great.
Any seasoning?
It's salt, a lot of salt, pepper, and garlic powder.
And what do you throw in? Are you like, give me some sides? Are you drinking? Are you a drinker?
Probably be a nice, good Cabernet wine. Maybe that would follow a gin and tonic or a vodka. Me and my wife drink vodka DDPs.
Okay.
Since I'm not going to be around very much longer, probably have some garlic mashed potatoes, something like that.
Like, are you a big dessert guy or no?
Not really, but I'd probably have something like a German chocolate cake or
Love a good German chocolate cake.
Cheesecake with cherries on top, or something
that
my grandma used to make. My wife hates it, but I'm a big red Jello with fruit mixed in at Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Just
so I'd have to throw that
some red 40
in.
dye in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're dying anyways, whatever.
Yeah. I'd probably have I like Slurpees, 7-Eleven Slurpees. So I'd probably have one of those on the side.
This has got to be the best death row meal ever. Like,
that's probably enough.
Big 40
It's pretty
ouncer.
good then.
And when you're talking a Slurpee, just because, but like what flavor? Because they
just
got
Coke.
Oh.
Well, Coke with banana, but you don't see banana. You don't see banana very often.
What? Dude, I've had a Coke one before, and
I've
they're
never
awesome.
heard of Coke with banana. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
No.
Well, because you always got to mix them.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah. Dude, I love it.
One last question came to mind before we wrap it up. Has your wife ever looked at you and just said you're absolutely nuts for doing any of this stuff?
Probably thinks I'm more than nuts most of the time, but she deserves a lot of support. She's been along on the ride, with me, and couldn't have done it without her, to be honest. It's a big commitment when you move your family to another country, and that was pretty skeptical, when we were looking at doing it. But where we lived in the UK, we lived in a small little village, and those people turned out to be probably some of our best friends in the world, and we keep in touch with them even now. We went on vacation with them last year, some of them. So I always figured making that move, either my kids would appreciate it and my wife at the end, or they were going to hate it, and I think it worked out okay for everybody.
That's awesome. Well, you didn't have a long career as a racer itself, but you've been racing for a very long time.
For sure,
and,
yeah.
That's pretty cool in itself. So we appreciate you coming on, and thanks to Doug and the boys for hosting us on this one. And again, you can tune into Pipe Dreams now on MotoAmerica Live Plus, which is super cool. I know we're a little bit PG-13 rated, so we're able to slide on
A
there.
little disclaimer out there.
Yeah.
But
But no, it's awesome. It's awesome to be a part of what you're doing, and hopefully the podcast is helping and do our part as well. So
And I appreciate the effort. I enjoy listening to your podcast when I get the chance. And next time I'll talk to my guys about putting my microphone stand in a better place.
dude, thank you so much again.
Thanks,
We
guys.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Chuck.
Good luck to both this weekend.
thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.